We're back, ladies and gentlemen, with Season 1, Episode 22, A Bird in the Hoof, which is the episode in which Celestia is visiting Ponyville, but while she is there, her pet, Phoenix, Philomena, is super sick, so Fluttershy absconds with her in order to heal her. Most of the episode is centered around that. She fails at healing her, she dies horribly, but then she comes back, because Phoenix. The end. That's this episode. So first and foremost is the most important thing ever. I think it's important we all acknowledge that mouse at the very beginning looks really, really adorable in its tiny little wheelchair. How did they make that wheelchair still workable and functional and so tiny? Anyways, so Angel shows up. You know, she can talk to animals. That's kind of her thing. So you'd think she could just talk to Angel, but no, Angel has to play charades with her, which is very cute, of course. You'll notice Angel has already started her shift from being, a prat to actually being helpful and useful. However, they have that I counted two separate Alice in Wonderland references. The first was the nature of how the animation. There's a very specific animated frame Angel goes to while carrying the clock. And the second is Fluttershy flat out says that she is late for a very important date. Yay, references. Also the music, sorry, so there's three. And Angel, of course, being helpful, which is nice. You need to have a firm hand when it comes to Fluttershy. Fluttershy, just go, it's okay. Naturally, we then cut to Rainbow, who does the Royal Guards thing with regards, the Queen's Guard thing with the Royal Guards. The British Guard, we must never betray any emotion, that whole thing, which I have no idea how true or not that is, but it certainly seems to be one of those common rumor, myth, whatevers, even if it's not actually true. I like how Rainbow's like, I'm bored. It just goes right back in. I also like how Fluttershy is rejected, not because she's not on the list, but because she's too shy to tell them that she's on the list. Because that is very Fluttershy. That is extremely in character. I can totally see it. That if someone hadn't come on and be like, no, she's on the list, she's cool, she would have never gotten in, even though she is on the list. It's just interesting to think about. So then we see Queen Celestia. I was doing a little reading up on this episode as I was going through. This is arguably the first real episode that helps to establish Celestia as a character. And you'll notice the episode goes out of its way to make her as relatable and friendly as possible. She's got kind of a casual air to her, which is good, actually. In fact, for all that I make fun of Celestia for being a bad leader, and I do, because I do think she's a bad leader, I do think she's a good person. I do think she's, the kind of affable person who would get along with just about everyone. And I do think that's an important part of her characterization. It's also helpful because, well, it's basically the exact opposite of the old Nickelodeon thing, right? I keep calling that the Nickelodeon thing, but people are like, Nickelodeon was amazing. Yeah, apparently in this decade. When I saw Nickelodeon, they were kind of crap. But the old Nickelodeon thing was when authority figures were always one of two things: the bad guys or bumblingly inept. And that was the commonality. You could probably look at any cartoon from the 80s and 90s and you'll see what I'm talking about, because that was pretty much the norm. They were the bumbling, inept people. It's also just about any cartoon that starred a child. This was also done. So I do actually like the fact that Celestia is not, well, I mean, she's a little bumbling, but she's not completely bumbling, and she's not, an evil authority figure. She's someone who's friendly, someone who's approachable. And that's extremely important because, well, to be completely blunt, I do think kids should be unafraid to approach authority figures, good or bad, to complain or to have an issue with, Anywho, couple thoughts before we talk about Celestia more here. Rarity, of course, goes completely overboard, probably because she's nervous about being present with the queen, or excuse me, the princess. Applejack is paralyzed by what to eat first. Speaking of which, I bothered to grab a screen cap of this, okay? Check this out. You see that? That is a ham sandwich. And I'm only pointing this out because I've already referenced it twice. in this series. And to my knowledge, this is the only time this ever comes up. So this probably isn't canon. This is probably early installment weirdness. But it's interesting that the animators didn't think about the fact that they were putting a ham sandwich on the pony platter. Anyways. So poor Applejack is, of course, completely paralyzed as to what to eat. And I've actually been there. I don't know if you know this, but I've mentioned this before. I've actually taken lessons on how to properly conduct yourself at like formal dinners or formal gatherings or whatever. And let me just say, it all sucks. Like, you have to do things in a very specific order. The volume at which you speak is changed. The nature of how exactly how you move your head with regards to who you're looking at and who you look at when you're talking to them, and what you have to do with your hands is something they talk about, and what you have to do with your back, and what you have to do with your legs, and just, oh my God, there's all sorts of things before you even get to the food. I only remember about half of it. This is all, quite a while ago at this point in my life. But I remember being like, okay, yes, and I'll do this, and yes, do this, and yes, do this. And it's just, holy crap. And so I kind of feel Applejack in that moment of just, should I eat? And maybe I don't want to make a faux pas. I'm not hungry. At least Applejack does, you'll notice, manage to get some food on her way out. And you'll also notice that Rarity manages to get out without damaging her dress. So that's nice that they showed that. Yeah, it's supposed to be like outside in, but there's like a specific pattern to it as you're going in. And also, you're only supposed to use certain things with certain types of food. Yeah, the one person who doesn't give a damn is Celestia, going back to that affable, presentable characterization thing I just mentioned. I never liked chocolate fountains. Hello, Sakage. What about you guys? I've never cared for chocolate fountains. Like, it's always struck me as just a little bit kind of, especially given how much work has to go into keeping that stuff clean. And I mean, it's just chocolate. I know this is going to sound weird. I'm not a huge fan of just chocolate. To me, chocolate is like a modifier. It's something you add to something else. But chocolate by itself doesn't really taste all that good to me. Now, chocolate with salt, or chocolate with watermelon, or chocolate with strawberries, or chocolate with peanut butter, or whatever, that's fantastic. But plain chocolate, I'm just like, Oh, thank you. Oh, I've seen plenty of chocolate fountains, and they're just kind of, Yeah, you're supposed to dip stuff into it. Of course, the one time I ever had a chocolate fountain, I didn't have anything to dip into it. They didn't provide anything to dip into it. You know what they provided? Cups. For just... This isn't like a drink. This is just heated up chocolate, and they provided cups. Whatever. Yeah, exactly, Sean. Just what? What? Sure, let's just have a cup of chocolate. And diabetes. Okay, so what happened when it got cold? It started slowly, Aethel. I'll never forget it, because you could start to see chunks moving through it as bits of it would solidify, and the motion kept it kind of going, but like it started kind of... It looked more like it was pushing out oatmeal, brown oatmeal rather than liquid. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. Moving along. So let's get talking about Queen Celestia. So I was looking into this. Originally, she was supposed to be queen rather than princess. In fact, the original, apparently, and I gotta add this. Apparently, the original treatise and original writing was that she was Queen Celestia in order to help differentiate where they were going with the princesses later. Hasbro didn't like that. Hasbro stepped in and was like, no. Queens are evil. What? Look at Disney films, because Disney has established the queens are evil concept, which Disney has only now, in the late 2020s, finally started to start moving away from. Or I guess 2010s, whatever. So they didn't want they didn't want Celestia to be a queen because she'll be evil then. It's a really minor thing to comment on. It's not like it frickin' matters, but it is amusing to me because they instead go with princess, because princesses are good people. You'll also notice, by the way, that My Little Pony does actually utilize queens as evil people several times. Or I guess, queens and kings. So, as evil people rather than, princesses who are good. I do I know this sounds like such a minor thing to complain about, but when it comes to the world building of the thing and the nature of it, I do think certain individuals should probably just be straight up queens. Especially since, as we learn later, princess is a title you earn by very virtue of deeds. Queen then could imply something else on top of that. In other words, she could literally be queen and princess at the same time, as contradictory as that probably sounds. Just food for thought. World building, don't mind me. Anyways. So we do also see that she has a bit of a sense of humor. Trollstia, I heard several people in chat calling her. It's actually probably my second favorite gag of the episode. when she fakes a sip. Gotcha. I that actually did catch me. I like that. We also then see a scene that makes a lot more sense having seen this episode before, because Celestia starts talking about how she loves creatures bright and old, and she's such a fan of things. And that's when, that exact moment is when Philomena decides to jump in and start coughing and hacking. Right when she's talking about how much she loves animals. Celestia, of course, takes it all in stride, and again, in hindsight, it's pretty obvious that that was Philomena trying to troll Celestia. Naturally, the troll princess would have the troll pet. I mean, duh, right? Anywho. So then the mayor requests an audience, and that actually got me wondering, what the heck does the mayor have to talk to her about? I wonder. But yeah, no, leaving the pet behind, probably deliberate, based on what we know. Based on what we end up at the end of the episode. What's interesting is Fluttershy, you'll notice, doesn't think ill of Celestia. This is another nice little point, and another reason why I kind of like this episode. It would have been very easy to... Yeah, exactly, Ethel. It would have been very easy for Fluttershy to be like, oh my gosh, she's taken such terrible care of her pet, I must fix it. Or, oh no, she's obviously awful or abusive or whatever. No, it's just, she's too busy. I'll help her out and then I'll return her safe and sound. No ill thoughts, no ill will there. So first they try bed rest. I gotta say, being too hot or too cold based on blankets, yeah, I've been there. I imagine several of you have too. I wonder what having a phoenix would be like too. Probably pretty warm. But so then, okay, medicine. Back when, what did we call her? You remember when I did the Madoka Magica episode of that rumination, and there was a dog right at the beginning before Anime Man, who was then brutally murdered by me. I can't remember what we called that dog. Was it Lore Dog that we called her? Or was it Anime Dog? I don't actually remember. Of course, everyone in chat's like, what are you talking about? I haven't watched that rumination, because screw you. Whatever her name is, whatever name we gave her, Thirsty Dog, I know some people used to call her on stream, because she was so audible when she was drinking. Back when I was taking care of her, and I had to actually get her, get medicine to her, that would be the exact method I would do of doing the medicine. I'd be like, okay, get a little thing of wet food, and squeeze the pill right into the middle there. Okay, there we go. Okay. And that's exactly how I used to. It's the first thing I thought of, because it does actually work. Although, apparently it doesn't work for birds. I guess because they don't eat, in large bites. That's the reason it worked on the dog, because the dog would go, and would just get the pill in there. Then they try the humidifier. Funnily enough, I've done that too, although that was with myself, back when I had a lot more throat issues and lesion issues. One of the only things, there were like two things that reduced the pain. And one was I just get in an extremely hot shower and just breathe for a bit. So, yep, totally with that. Then they try aromatherapy. That's never worked for me. What about you guys? Like, aromatherapy just gives me a headache. That scent. I can literally picture it right now. Just all the incense and just kind of, and it's headache. All I think of is headache. Ugh. Oh God, acupuncture. Hold still. Stab. Then, of course, they try a warm bath. Why did she swell up in the bath? And yeah, Philomena actively... On second viewing, it's pretty obvious Philomena appreciates the pandering, but is obviously not trying to get better, hence why she doesn't drink the soup, and she doesn't take the pill, etc., etc. Then she gets an ointment which gives her pimples. I've seen some reactions to ointment, but damn. Then, of course, she just starts frickin' taping the feathers back onto her. This leads to Twilight showing up. Twilight's like, hey, WTF? And Fluttershy's... Now, what's funny about this scene, Fluttershy and Twilight have kind of a pseudo-argument back and forth. What's really interesting to me is Twilight brings up the obvious problem. You can't just... She's not your bird. You didn't ask permission. But I like Fluttershy's immediate and also obvious counter-argument. I couldn't just stand there doing nothing. She was in need of help. She needed some kind of aid. I had to try and do something. The episode makes a point multiple times that Fluttershy was not really in the wrong so much as she should have asked permission first. And that is probably the main point of the episode, the Aesop of the episode. And can I just say that's actually a pretty good message to send to kids. There's nothing wrong with saying, oh, I can help, let me do this. Just say something first. You know? Just communicate first, because communication is a good thing. And frankly, we probably need more real communication in our lives. So just, anyways. So then the guards show up, and we find out that Twilight is an incredibly bad liar. Huh. Funny how that works out. And now so then they banish her. Wait, no. Then they throw her into the dungeon. Wait, no. They're going to banish her, then throw her in a dungeon in the place where they banished her. Because that's totally what Celestia would do, right? This is not the first time that Twilight has freaked out, but this is probably the hardest Twilight has freaked out to date. There's this bit where Fluttershy says, do you really think she would do that? And Twilight says, no, but are you willing to risk it? Which just says that there's at least a little bit of an actual irrational fear there that Twilight really does have. This will actually be coming to a head in Season 2. If I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure it's Season 2 is the episode where we really do finally see just how much of a panic anxiety problem that Twilight really does have. Yeah, Lesson 0. That's exactly the episode I was thinking of. Is that Season 2? I should double check because I got the Season 1 stuff here. So it's not in Season 1, so it's probably Season 2, and I am probably correct. So, then we have the Benny Hill section. In total, I know that this is probably just admitting some biases here, but in total contrast to all the Looney Tunes humor of the last episode, all the Benny Hill stuff just nailed it for me. This actually got me laughing multiple times. Probably my favorite individual gag is when they go... Philomena's just sitting there with a newspaper, and she's just got this giant bushy mustache. Otherwise, it's just her. She's like, huh? And then goes back to the newspaper. I was rather amused by the Benny Hill section. Yakety Sax song plays, blah, blah, blah. And then Philomena is like, I love how she dramas her death to the max. She's even like, oh, I'm going to die. And then she falls over. And then she does it again before she, plummets into ash. Yeah, the song got really close. I was probably brushing up against copy wrong right there. Fluttershy's expression when she's holding the ash, that really says everything it needs to. Just, like, she starts off with this shock, and they do a really good job of animating it, too, because she starts off with shock, and then she goes into horror, and then tears well up, and then her eyes, like, double in size, and she's just like, no, no. She doesn't even say anything. She doesn't need to. You could just see it all over her face. And that's when Celestia shows up. And there's this nice little bit where Twilight's like, no, will you let me do this? She'll go easier on me. Which actually says a lot, that Twilight really does, in the moment, think they're about to be punished for what they've done. Once again, showcasing how much of a weak spot Twilight has when it comes to Celestia. Which, again, will be coming up again in Season 2. But then she's like, no, get up. You're freaking everyone out. Come on. Let's go. Because, of course, Celestia would have a phoenix as a pet. Or partner, however you want to think of that. It's treason, then. And that's what Celestia says. But yeah, no, Philomena gets up, leaves her little thing. Sadly, I don't think we ever really see Philomena again. We do see phoenixes in the future. So phoenixes do come back in the future. A Spike, to give you an example of at least one example. But... I I was kind of with this episode. I shouldn't say kind of with. I do actually like this episode. Yeah, we find out phoenixes are total badasses. I do like this episode, and I do like the idea of a lot of how they present it. I like the message. It did actually make me laugh. It's a nice insight into Fluttershy and Twilight, and it's probably the first episode to really establish a true character for Celestia, because up until now, she's mostly just been a background character. This is the first episode to try and flesh her out, and we're going to be seeing more of those in the future. So good, 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 good. And then it ends on a laugh track straight out of the original series. Or a sitcom. Super wah-wah ending. Super wah-wah. There's two major types of wah-wah, and this is the other type. This is so blatant. I'm not going to let you decide on this one, guys. I'm sorry. This is definitely a wah-wah. They even have the slow pan out of the camera as everyone's laughing just a little bit too long. There's a lot of these in season 1, aren't there? I really didn't think there would be this many when we started this counter. My goodness. Anyways. Overall, good episode. I actually like this one. And in fact, the next episode, Cutie Mark Chronicles, is one of the ones I remember most fondly. In fact, Cutie Mark Chronicles, All's Well That Ends Well, Party of One, and Best Night Ever are all good episodes by memory. So I'm actually looking forward to the next 2 weeks. Either way, I'm going to go ahead and let me double check. Actually, did I talk about that? I did, yep. Actually, before I cut off, even though it doesn't really mean anything, I'm curious what you guys would have thought if she was Queen Celestia instead of Princess Celestia. Because, spoilers for future episodes, the only thing that would really change is it would alter the dynamic between her and the other princesses. For example, would Luna be Queen, or would Luna be Princess? And of course, Twilight and Cadence are both princesses. There's an automatic variance in power dynamic when you have that kind of differentiation going on. Now, personally, again, if you handed me the reins of the story, I would go ahead and I would make there be queens and princesses. Just have the two be separate. Like Weoud's mentioned earlier that Celestia is more of a spiritual leader. I would make that the princess title. I would make Queen the title that is more about, being an actual political leader. And I would still make Celestia Queen, even though she's not actually the leader. And again, future episodes will really discuss that. Queen in name, in short. Luna would probably never actually go past Princess then, if I was writing this. Cadence, however, would absolutely become Queen. Because she is actually the political leader of the Crystal Empire. She does actually run the place. So, just food for thought. Just a little bit of world building that I think it could add to the series. And then you're probably thinking, well, what do we do with I can't think of her name all of a sudden. Oh my god, what is her name? The Changeling Queen. I can't think of her name. God, I'm stupid. I can picture her. Chrysalis, excuse me. Thank you. God. Of course, thank you for joining me, Bridget. Thank you, everyone, for not being awful. Y'all are still awesome. I get the occasional crap comment on YouTube, but y'all are still awesome. I've only lost a couple of patrons so far to this. Chrysalis, you could do a couple things with her, because you could either maintain her as Queen Chrysalis, but deliberately make the point that she is not princess. In other words, showcasing that she's a political leader, but absolutely not a spiritual leader, that she is purely the head of state and nothing else, which is actually a point that is made up later in the series, if you're thinking about it. And that's why she gets deposed, quite frankly, is because she wasn't a spiritual leader. Thus, you could then have, I can't remember his name, but the changeling dude, the guy who deposes her, make him prince to further emphasize that distinction. Rather than being king, he is now their prince. Thorax, thank you. I really do think that making that distinction, even though it's a minor one, would add to the dynamics between several of the higher tier characters across the series. And I think you could do some fun stuff with that. They don't, of course, because queens are evil. You'd be surprised, Ruth, or maybe you wouldn't. I have a pretty cool audience. I have an amazing stream audience, but I still have a pretty cool YouTube audience. And even the worst of what I see on YouTube is nowhere near as bad as the internet gets. So I'm not really complaining. Not really. It just boggles me every now and again. Whatever. Food for thought. Let's go ahead and chop this off. So let me hit the local recording.